This week on the podcast, in a world where a spotty child with a laptop could replicate your business next week, what are you going to do to protect yourself? Welcome to the Profit Cash Growth Podcast. This is the podcast for 6 and 7 figure business owners who are looking to grow a financially successful business. My co-host, Claire Hancock, is a finance director, chartered accountant and entrepreneur. And every week, I'll be exploring guidance and frameworks designed to help you increase your profits, improve your cash flow and grow your business.
So sometimes you just completely put the wrong word into a sentence, don't you? And it becomes...
Not sometimes, all the time.
It becomes quite prolific. So once you
But it works, doesn't it?
Not really.
Because you know what I'm talking about.
No. Well, because I'm married to you. But
I
once
think you
you looked at me very seriously and went, Claire, that's like having a glimpse into my future. And...
Yeah, but you know what I meant.
You meant glimpse.
Anyway, you're going to talk about the dog, aren't you?
Yes. You had some tenants move into a property the other week and their dog was there and you were telling me it was a very nice dog. And
But I couldn't remember what brand it was.
You couldn't remember what brand it was.
I don't understand why that's funny. I couldn't.
Because it's a breed, it's not a brand.
I was like, it's quite big, it's black, it's furry and it's very bouncy, but I can't remember what kind of brand of dog it was. And you just couldn't, you're like, what? You can't call it a dog brand. I'm like, why? You know what I mean, don't you?
I do know what you mean. We still don't know what brand it is though, do we?
No, maybe not. But anyway, we're going to do a bit of an AI podcast today. I've got AI webbed throughout the whole of that. I've carefully crafted the whole thing from the shit chat through to the news story, through to the main story. So I'm going to start with an interesting story because we've done a lot about, and it's all linked. I think it's all linked. We've talked a lot about ROI and businesses getting ROI and various other things. So first, I wanted to talk to you about, we've been trialing something in our estate agency that kind of does AI WhatsApp chats with viewers and buyers and various other things. And we tried it. We said we'd give it 3 to 6 months. We said 3 originally, we extended it to 6. And the idea was that it's going to be, working day and night when a human arguably isn't. So it's going to capture every opportunity. So we're bound to get more revenue from mortgages, from
So hang on.
properties.
I think we need to set the scene a little bit. So basically when people contacted you either via WhatsApp or telephone?
No. Just put just Rightmove. Just so when they
on
inquire on
Rightmove
Rightmove, a WhatsApp pops up from an AI chat bot.
And basically, it was about trying to identify opportunities that your team is supposed to do, but maybe they've got other things. So the majority of the comms is about, I want to view this property.
Yeah.
But there's something called a NOM, which is not on market. So does that person have a house that needs to sell?
Yeah.
That's a brilliant opportunity to spot. And then there's also opportunities to sell referral fees for mortgages and legals and things like that, isn't there? So the whole idea was that this chatbot would try and weave out this information really early on to find out whether there was an opportunity to also sell this person's house and get referral fees.
To be honest with you, the concept, I was sold by the concept. We parted with our money straight away for a trial. It seems so obvious. Basically, the second you say, I'm interested in this, we start having a nice detailed chat with you, a very, very backwards and forth, very human chat. And it was brilliant. Nothing wrong with the way it came across. How you doing? What are the kind of times you'd like to view the property? Do you need to sell your property? Have you got a mortgage sorted? All that kind of thing. And it's just happening in the background. So it sounds absolutely brilliant. But the long and short of it is that we've had it going and we get, hundreds, even thousands of inquiries. And there has just been zero ROI, literally zero. We've tried desperately. I think we could attribute one thing to it, but it's very difficult to be sure about it. But there's just been no financial ROI from an opportunity perspective. And there's been no cost-saving ROI from a people perspective because our guys still have to arrange the viewing with the vendor and everything. You can't cut any cost out. And they weren't dealing with that conversation anyway, our outsourced telephone people and various things. So it was very efficient anyway. So we might just not have been a good use case as well.
We talked about this quite a bit and you said actually it was better at getting the leads. So the number of leads went up. But actually when you were referring them, for example, to the mortgage person, the guy was coming back and just saying these are dog shit.
Quality.
It's just really poor quality. We don't want them.
So it's raising the volume, but the quality
so it actually created more work.
It actually did create more work.
It increased the number of leads that had to be followed up on, but it did not have a dot of difference on conversions.
Which is bizarre because you would argue that it's doing a far better job of qualifying the people than not doing it. So the whole thing was bizarre. And anyway, it got to a point where we're like, halfway through, we tried to cancel with them and they were like, oh, well, half the price and keep it going for a bit longer. So we're like, yeah, we'll keep it going for a bit longer. We'll see. We're now sort of 6 months in and the housing market's not in great fettle this year at all, down about 20%, 30% in London. So we're like, we just need to cut out costs that it just isn't working. And this is doing nothing. There's no reason to keep it going. So we sent him and said, look, I know we said before, but we want to cancel this. And they kind of came back immediately and are like, is there anything we can do? Anything we can do with this? Whatever. Can we cut the price further? Whatever. So we're like, no, decision's been made. Doesn't work for us. Very sad. And literally they came back with just 2 words and it just said, free forever ? What do you do with that?
But yeah, it's baffling because then you really do have to make a decision. Is it actually damaging your business?
They made the decision really hard then because unless it's damaging the business, actually, to be honest, untangling it has a little bit of work attached to it as well. So effectively, we've obviously just left it going.
Anyway, what's the moral with this, Simon? Why are you sharing this piece of information?
Well, I'm sharing it because I'm saying if something at the front end, I think this is what is interesting with AI, is there's actually nothing that half the challenge with most tech products and most people's services full stop is to get someone to part with money from the off. I don't think that's the issue with AI tools. I think they tell a good story, don't they?
Yeah.
We had no issue parting our money straight away. You've had no issue parting your money for quite a lot of stuff.
I'll pay money for anything that's got AI in the title.
But how bad is the churn on it? And how quickly do they lose those customers when it doesn't work?
What's the current churn rate? 90% of AI companies are shutting within the first year.
93, we said this on a podcast the other week, 93% of all AI startups have started in the last 3 years have already closed. So really interesting. But yeah, so that's my...
It's something you've really got to think about. If you find a product that is very good. We found this with our software company, Spread Software, that has launched recently. And we had people coming to us saying, I'm with a competitor at the moment, but it's a one-man band. I'm not sure if they're going to be open for long, blah, blah, blah. And so it's then this whole, I'm ruining it.
Yeah.
But it's the risk, isn't it? They don't want all their eggs in this basket of software that could potentially shut down. So if you've got to be really, really careful when you're trying out AI software now, that you don't want to spend too much time embedding stuff into your company and building processes around it. Yeah. If it's not going to be there.
Well, if it's less than a 1 in 10 chance that that's going to be there in 3 years, you've really, really worried.
You've really got to do your due diligence on these software companies and find out whether it's worth investing any time in them.
Exactly. Anyway, as I said, this is a perfectly crafted episode. So we're going to move on to this week's news story of the week because this is great. So my news story of the week, I swapped this out at the last minute yesterday because I already had a news story for today and this popped up and I love talking about this because it's such a contentious issue and I just want to go into more detail about it. So the headline is Tech Titans Fuel Bubble Fears with a £725 billion budget for AI. So basically the moral of the story is that if you take the big four, Alphabet, Amazon, Meta, Microsoft, basically they were forecast to spend $650 billion this year on the AI infrastructure. This is all the data centers and everything else that's in there. And they've ended up spending $725 billion this year. That's what the forecast. That's 81% up from last year's $400 billion. And the forecast now for next year will be that they will surpass a yearly spend of £1 trillion, $1 trillion on infrastructure for AI in the whole of next year, right? It's just, I just had to put this in perspective. So the Netherlands has a GDP of 1.1 trillion. Switzerland has a GDP of 1 trillion. Saudi Arabia has a GDP of 1.1 trillion. Poland has a GDP of 1 trillion. So they're going to spend in 1 year what the GDP of those countries are. That's how insane this is, right? And I think the question that's going on here, so the way this article sort of plays out is well, this is this line that sort of opened up to me. So it's like one person here, he's the professor of neuroscience at New York University. Don't know why he's qualified to comment on it. But there is a building concern that he calls this what he believes is the greatest misallocation of capital in human history. And that I read that line, and that's why I pulled this news story in here, because that is a powerful line, isn't it?
Everybody's talking about this,
really
the AI bubble, and the fact that these
interested.
chips only last 3 years, and all these AI companies are going bust. And it's so difficult to know what to believe, isn't it? Because on the one hand, you've got people like this guy saying that there's this huge bubble, and then you've got people like Daniel Priestley saying no accountants and lawyers will have a job in 12 months' time, and mass unemployment. And Daniel Priestley's been saying that for over 2 years now. So it probably. An element of it will come
somewhere in the middle.
It will be somewhere in the middle. I think that it's going to be a little bit like the dot-com bubble, because I think that we're 10 to 15 years out from seeing any significant shift in the workforce due to AI.
100% agree. I'm so pleased you said that, because usually we argue about these things. I literally couldn't agree more.
Isn't this a nice moment?
You know what? This is what I think's happening. I think I agree with him. I think that this is, don't know whether it's the greatest misallocation of capital in human history, but this is going to be a mess, because the capital's going in today. I think the results will come out in the next 20 years. And I think he made 3 points, which this is why the whole of this podcast episode is going to move on to this, because that's what it's all about. 3 things which is really important about these AI businesses. Number 1, none of them are making a profit, right? Not so much of an issue in of itself, because lots of companies, Amazon, various, don't make profits for years, but can see the long-term vision. That's not so much an issue.
When you've got PE backing.
Yes. But the next 2 he hammered home. Number 2 is none of them have a technical moat. They have no moats around their business. It's a complete commodity. And 3, because of that, the only thing that's going to happen is a massive price war is inevitable, which we're seeing already. You're seeing it. We saw it last week. Claude dropped, Claude's price is £18. ChatGPT just slashed theirs from 20 to 18, didn't they?
Yep.
Like, it
free
is
for
just
life, free forever.
Free forever. Yeah. Again, it's almost like I've crafted this to perfection, this podcast, but because I didn't even notice that connection. We're now connecting back up through the podcast. But you're absolutely right. It's exactly what they say AI is going to be, which is the greatest commodity. It's like electricity. And the problem is with the greatest commodities is that it's a race to the bottom.
Although, how much money was spent, if you looked back at when electricity became mainstream? Because, AI has been around for decades now, hasn't it? It's not a new thing, but it's only recently become mainstream and adopted widely. So if you look back at the same adoption curve of electricity, for example, and looked at the amount of money that was spent building electricity infrastructure across the world, what would the comparative be? That would be quite an interesting one to look at, because I understand what the concern is, but essentially, they're saying, X amount spent on AI data centers, and it's like, well, they built a bloody building. Like, they put utilities to a building. Those things will exist even if the data center doesn't have a data center in it anymore. It could just be a good warehouse or something.
But the greatest cost are the actual chips that die out after 3 years. That's the challenge. Is that they're the expense, not really.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is, like, if you spend £1 billion building a data center, it's not £1 billion on chips, is it?
I'd love to know. I think it's
not a billion. It's not £1 billion a data center. I mean, probably $500 million of it is on bloody consultancy fees, I'd imagine. So, you're Googling this now. Are you Googling it or are you AI in it?
I'm AI in it.
ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini.
I'm a Claude man these days.
You're a Claude man. We do like Claude, don't we?
Yeah. It's not going to give me to finish. Just a bit woolly. 63% of the spend on a data center is on the chips alone.
Okay.
So it's pretty large, isn't it?
It is. No, don't get me wrong.
The building and civil construction is 15 to 20% of it. So the only bit that would remain if the chips die out every 3 years is the building, which is 15 to 20% of it, and 5% of it's on cooling systems, because obviously they've got to keep them cool. Mm-hmm. So that is big. 65% of your £1 trillion. If it
What I would really like to see is how much these companies have also covertly, I don't think covertly is the right word, but maybe under the radar, have also invested in utilities. So either renewable energies or oil and gas and things like that, because obviously the electricity that goes into these data centers is absolutely staggering. And
I'm sure I'm sure it's linked, because they know they're going to need to power them anyway, so they're going to build the power plants to do it if they need to, aren't they?
Look,
or get the government to do it.
If you haven't listened to our last podcast about hedging, I bet that there's some hedging going on here. And they've locked in the price of these chips for years to come and blah, blah, blah. So, very interesting.
I literally so excited just to watch this play out, because basically I don't know how, this is a bit like the .com. It's like everyone's been talking about it, and it's grown and grown, and it'll bang at some point. I just don't, and it'll be in the next 5 years. We're about to see it, aren't we? We'll see the fireworks, whatever happens. I'm so excited.
We love a little bet with things like this, and we do forward date for 5 years, 10 years. If we're having a big discussion like this and we say, I think what is going to be true in 5 or 10 years time, and this is going to be one that we're going to put in our diary in 5 years time to come back to.
I would date this towards the end of next year.
Do you reckon?
Yeah, end of 2027.
I don't reckon that's enough time.
What, for the bubble to burst? I'm talking about for investors to pull out and for them to collapse the market because they realise they put their money in the wrong place and it's not going to work. I think in another 18 months' time, if they're not seeing the wood for the trees...
I don't think 18 months is long enough.
Okay.
I think it's got to be 3 years. So I think 5 years we'll see what's happened.
Right, cool. I'll stick it in the diary now and talk about it on the podcast then.
And sorry, I'd just like to say, Simon, this is not my news story.
No, I said to you at the beginning, I've swapped the news story live this morning. If you were listening,
I literally just did 15 minutes of preparation on this other news story here. Oh. So I think I did quite well.
Yeah,
ad-libbing.
Absolutely. Great. Well, in this wonderfully crafted episode, let's move on to this week's deep dive. So this week, we're talking about what protects your business when anyone can do what you do. And of course, we're talking about the fact that AI is, I think they described it, again, another news story I read, that AI has basically created the lowest barrier to entry in business in human history. And would you disagree with that? I personally don't disagree with that sentence. I think, well, we're watching people, they set up businesses, they're in the millions within months. We're watching it.
It just doesn't have still a unicorn thing.
Well, they are, but unicorns don't exist when they have to build a shop and all the rest. It just didn't happen. So we are in a crazy time, and we can see how quickly people's businesses could be wiped out by people who don't have ways to protect their business. So
basically, you're saying tech-enabled spotty teenagers with a laptop in their bedroom.
It could be, but could also just be people like me and you that have just got a hunger for things and we just go for it. And now we're just like, we're dangerous. Like, we are literally dangerous, aren't we?
We are.
I feel dangerous in the last few months since Claude's doing what Claude's done. You look dangerous. I'm just looking over your shoulder, looking at what you're doing, thinking, you look freaking dangerous.
I'm now at the point where I feel like I need 4 screens to work from, or maybe just like 2 different laptops or something, because I've got like my day-to-day work, but I also have Claude constantly working in the background or something. So I need Claude open and I need the terminal or like command prompt or something so I can code open as well. So that's almost like a separate thing that works in the background. You give it a task, the code is working, but you just need to sort of check in on it every 10 minutes. And then I've got work.
Yeah, I think for everyone else, you're going to alienate everybody though, because you're a bit of a, I don't think most people are sat there running their transport company with 7 screens. So.
I think the world of 2 laptops or like 4 screens or something like that, I think it's coming. I think you're walking to people's offices and there'll be more like that. If I think about all of the MDs of all the businesses that you represent, I can't imagine any of them doing that. You know, they're just like, they're running trucks, they're training dogs, they're, you know, God knows what they're doing. Like, they're not sitting in front of screens coding. Yeah, maybe.
So it's not the world of business.
For office-based people, I think that will be...
For losers.
It is. Okay, yeah, I put myself in that category. But why are we talking about this today?
This is a good excuse to shoehorn the good old-fashioned build a moat around your business topic and just do a bit of a reminder of these type of things. Have you got something to say? Yeah, go on.
I was actually just going to add a little bit of theory to this. Where does this theory of like build a moat around your business come from? And it's from Michael Porter.
Yeah, it's a famous...
very, very famous model called Porter's 5 Forces. And what it looks at is basically, it's kind of a way of predicting how successful and profitable a business is going to be. You look at the 5 biggest forces that impact whether that business is going to be sustainable and profitable in the long term.
Yeah.
And one of the elements of Porter's 5 Forces is it's called threat of new entrants. How easy it is for somebody to enter into your marketplace and compete with you. So you look at like airlines, for example, you know, it's we can't just go and buy an aeroplane and get the licenses.
Really hard, capital intensive.
Capital intensive, but even trying to get an aeroplane, you know, there's only 2 suppliers of airplanes out there, isn't there? So
and the backlog's like 5 years.
Exactly. We don't have any landing spots. We don't have any pilots. So, you know, there are some industries that once you're in them, is incredibly difficult for anybody to come in and take your space. But then there are other industries that we're seeing now are just being taken over by these spotty teenagers with a laptop, for example, and Claude AI and all of that kind of stuff. So we're going to really deep dive on this specifically, the threat of new entrants, what the biggest threats are and how you can think about protecting yourself against these people. Because the reality is that just saying I do it better than them is not good enough. Because I know that I am better than the Claude FD. But when somebody lands on a Claude written website and it talks the lingo, how does somebody know that Claire is a better FD than Claude? And it's very difficult to get that message across now, and from a marketing perspective, and customer testimonials and all of those types of things can be faked. So you have to have something that makes it more difficult for somebody to compete with you beyond just saying my product is better.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's going to become even harder when everybody can throw out, quotes, proposals, slideshows that are the most phenomenal and polished and intelligent as they come across, because they've not produced them the same way as everyone doing people's homework and whatever else. So how anybody can make a decision about a product or a service when what they're getting is just going to be identical makes it very challenging. You need to think again about how do I show that who I am as a person, or who my business is, culture, values, and decision-making process as a business to you, rather than just what our proposal is, because everyone's proposal is going to be amazing and polished because it's just going to be produced by AI.
And I was at an event a couple of weeks ago, and they had a really great AI speaker there, a lady, and she was talking about this methodology. She calls it "You Do You."
You literally talked about this in the podcast last week.
Yeah, but it's really apt for this.
The 60 to 26.
It's 20% needs to be you up front. Yeah. It's the specification, the information, the context, the briefing that you would give. Like you were briefing an employee to do a task for you, still have to do that legwork up front. Then you let AI do 60% of the number crunching, the legwork, the writing, the pulling it together.
What's this got to do with the people buying the service? Hang
on. And then you need to do 20% of legwork up at the other end, checking and refining and making sure that the output is correct. So actually, maximum we think is that Claude, for example, can take 60% of the legwork out of something. There's still a lot of human input, and that is where people go wrong. Is they will give ChatGPT or something a really shit prompt like "write me an email," and it just sounds like an email from anybody. It's so generic.
Yeah,
and so there is a lot of skill in getting the most out of AI, and people are getting better at it. And that is why it's becoming more difficult to compete with AI.
Yeah. Okay, well, I'm going to open up with my first one, which is brand. Brand. Actually, shouldn't really start with this. It's not very accessible for people our listener size, because it's something that does take time. You can't create a brand very quickly. Brands are made over years.
I think brand loyalty, when we talk about brands, we talk about brand loyalty here. And what we're talking about is that, my dog only eats pedigree, so I'm never going to switch to a different brand because I'm so loyal to pedigree. Even if somebody put exactly the same thing in a different tin with a different wrapper on, you still wouldn't switch away from your beloved pedigree.
Yeah.
But I think that there's other ways that businesses can be brand loyal. Like, for example, I know that a lot of people follow me as an individual. They're not following Profit Cash Growth.
Yeah.
They're following Claire Hancock on LinkedIn. And there's a lot of people that are loyal to my brand. And so your people can be a really key part of that. I've got customers that work with us that, they don't really have any branding. They don't really have a website. They've just been, really well-established family businesses that have been going for years, and everybody in the industry knows them. Yeah. Everybody knows their name. Everybody knows that they're good people and a good business, and they get business because of it. So it's not necessarily about having a fancy brand that's well known by consumers. There's lots of these hidden ways that you can have brand loyalty, and it's just about being well known and well trusted.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about this last week with W.H. Smith, didn't we? Which was a good example. But I've wrote a couple of other things around brand that is accessible to small businesses. You've touched on one of them, which is personal brand, which is you can build a personal brand quite quickly now, and people actually really resonate with you. But I wrote the word build a story brand, which is really important, which is, we're in a world today where people will start to buy from you quickly because they resonate with your story. And that story, if I take the most obvious extreme one, is things like your story is an eco story. It's a story that resonates with people because you're being kind to the environment. You have a very sustainable business model, that type of thing. Or you have some sort of story around your food, your grandma cooked this food and various, and we see this a lot, that people can resonate with that brand and that story. And I think that's all linked into this sort of overarching word of brand. I think brand can be, you can over-grandiose it into just Coke and things like that. But actually, it's those micro bits underneath it. I think that's the key.
But I think it's trust, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's ultimately what it comes down to. So brand...
Reputation.
Yeah, it's not enough just to be well known.
Yeah. Good.
You've got to do the legwork in the background to be trusted as well. Trusted and liked. It's not just enough to be well known.
Absolutely. So my next one is intellectual property, which is, now this is easily explained and a good one because it's protectable. So this is easy, isn't it?
You've done some brainstorming here. I've got the actual Porter's Five Forces here.
Yeah, I didn't want to go through it. I just want to go through my own.
So I'm actually going to link intellectual property into the bigger thing of regulation.
No, they're two different things. Intellectual property is a patent on your design. That's not really regulation.
Okay. If you want to talk about it,
yeah. I'm talking about, patenting something. Somebody can't copy your design because you've got an international patent on it. So that's intellectual property.
Okay, then
so if
we
you can get
this into
good.
the category of retaliation.
Is that what you're doing right now?
That's what it's called. So this is about retaliation. Is, for example, some of the bigger. This probably doesn't happen with our small businesses, but when there are big, well-known brands, for example, like supermarkets, it's been well known that some supermarkets will go around and buy up land to prevent their competitors from coming into that space.
Yeah, same as house builders. Yeah, they'll buy up plots of land and they'll land bank.
Exclusive deals.
Yeah.
So, supermarkets, another classic one. Exclusive deals. If you want this product, you can only buy it from Tesco's.
Sure. Yeah,
those types of things. And patents and lawsuits sit under that because it's so protected that if somebody tries to do anything, like, that Tesco's or Homebase has got something similar. If you try and launch into that market, they're just going to hit you with a lawsuit.
Yeah.
And it's really, really difficult to.
Yeah, they're great. They can just drop a legal letter on a cease and desist and people just run away. So they're all great. My third one is ecosystem, and this has become bigger and bigger and bigger in the digital world, and this is how you can kind of put it together in a digital world. The big ones are obviously Apple, Microsoft, Google. They all have an ecosystem that you're tied to with your devices, or you're tied to with your software. You're tied to Microsoft, you have to use the Teams, you use the Excel. I'm tied to Google, I have to use Google Meet, I use Google Gmail, various other things. I'm tied to Apple through my devices because they talk to each other and I can share between them really quickly. You're tied to PC and Windows. So it's like those ecosystems are very, very powerful, and you just need to think about how you can create your ecosystems at a smaller level as well. And a lot of the ways that people do this is through sort of loyalty cards, isn't it? Or loyalty schemes. That's how people create ecosystems that people keep coming back to.
Some really interesting ways that this has been done recently as well is like tying yourself to another brand as well. So for example, Octopus Energy, we have an electric Audi, and we then went to Octopus because Octopus have done a deal with Audi so that the free electric charging at night time works with the Audi app. So that's an example of where they're tied. Tesco's club cards, swap your club card points for Cineworld vouchers or Pizza Express vouchers or something like that.
Their loyalty package, really, however that ties up and whatever they do, I think that is good. I mean, the most basic example for very small businesses, every 6 haircuts get a haircut free.
Yeah.
Every 6 coffees get a coffee free.
Because it ties
somebody to repeat purchase for you because they're waiting for the free one that they're getting. And that is, for me, part of what I would put under ecosystem. Because it's all part of your ecosystem.
Do you know what's so clever about this whole tying somebody to this bonus event or something like that when you have somebody in a contract? So, like, for example, I have it with my customers. I've got my customers on 12-month contracts generally. And we know when we need to be uber on every single last detail. Like, okay, we try and go the extra mile all the time. But when somebody's contract's coming up for renewal, I am on my team constantly. Do not drop the ball on this client now when I'm trying to talk to them about renewing a contract with us. And that's what a loyalty scheme of like buy 6 get 1 free will give you, is that client, that point of switch,
getting closer and closer,
and that point of switch is so important. If you don't have anything like that, then the client could literally just switch away from you at any point. And so therefore it's that point of switching that I've locked them down to a certain amount of time where I can predict when they're likely to be thinking about moving away from me, and therefore you can ramp it up and make sure that you lock them in.
I mean, I've never really thought that if they give me a shit-free haircut, then I'm then back to zero. So there's no need to be. I can switch at that point.
But how many if you had hairdressers, how many of your team do you think would see this is a free one and think, oh, just do a really quick one? The customer's not paying.
They're not paying. Yeah, I don't know. My next one is legal, and this really is about, getting people in contracts for long periods of time, various other things. An example would be if you have a commercial property and someone's in a 20-year lease, you've got that revenue guarantee for 20 years. It's a hell of a moat against your business there. Same as getting people we used to have, our contracts were all 5 years with the airlines when we did contracts. They were always pretty, BA was 5 years. So you knew that you had like certainty to invest in equipment, materials, and nobody could take that contract from you within that period.
The longer you tie somebody into a contract as well, the bigger the task of moving feels.
Yeah.
Because they're so embedded with you over that period of time.
And you're seeing this more with even really small purchases now, like mobile phones has gone from 12 months to 24 months to 36 months now. The vast majority of mobile phone contracts are now a 36-month contract. That's insane, isn't it? A 3-year contract.
Yeah, but I think that's only because of the price of handsets.
It is.
And there's not enough of a change that people were like, I'll just keep my shitty old phone because there's no difference with the iPhone now.
But it's not, but what a smart strategic move that, it might be to do with that, but it's also just tied them to the network for another year, another 2 years, like the network's getting their network fees as well. So they're my 4 that I brought to it. And then I wrote Claire,
take over.
Actually, I did write one more, which I don't really know.
I don't think you did.
I wrote on mine. I wrote capital.
Okay, well, look, I'm going to go down the official ones that are in Porter's 5 Forces under the category of threat of new entrants. Some of them we've already done, so I'll just gloss over. But firstly, we've got regulation. You talked about this a little bit, but for example, we're a chartered accountancy firm. So I know that when people land on our website and see that we're a chartered accountancy firm and we only have qualified employees that are qualified accountants, that's a selling point over, any Tom, Dick and Harry that might be licensed in India or Pakistan or somewhere like that, where we're getting a lot of competition from. Got your hand up, go on, Simon.
I don't disagree with you. But I don't believe that it's very powerful anymore.
Maybe that's not a good example.
A good example would be in I'm just thinking about our industry, like with estate agency and the letting, is like I've never known it make nobody notice it. Or
I just took a first example, but you go on and you think anything where something's regulated. So if you need an FCA license, if you need a medical license, if you need any sort of license to trade, there is a barrier to somebody going into that because there's some significant legwork up front for somebody to get that license in order to be able to trade.
Yeah.
So that in itself puts a mini moat around your business. Anything that's regulated, we see right up to the top end where you think, if you want to sell certain products that could be used in bombs or something like that, imagine how regulated that industry is. Medical, airlines, that type of thing. So heavily regulated.
Oh, yeah.
Very expensive and difficult to keep your regulations, to get them in the first place and then keep them and maintain them. So regulation is
a better example of that one would be things like Ofsted.
Yeah, brilliant. Yeah.
Like nurseries,
schools.
Set up a nursery. You can't just set up a nursery tomorrow dead easily. Food hygiene's not that good, is it? But that type of thing.
Yeah.
Where do awards sit in yours?
What do you mean awards?
Well, is winning awards?
No, because anyone can just win an award and pay. Look, I'm going through my list here. Stop asking questions. Right, next one, economies of scale. There are some industries that it's a race to the bottom in terms of price. Pricing is very, very important for you to break through, particularly, selling pens, for example. Okay, there's some really niche pen sellers like Parker, but the vast majority of people selling pens is about the price of the pen, isn't it? Realistically, copy paper in your office. Those types of things where it's all about price means the more you can make, you've got economies of scale and therefore you've got an edge because your price can be lower.
Yeah.
Same with airlines. We've seen how Ryanair, EasyJet, people like that cut through. It was about price. Can we get more bums on seats, bring the prices down, and therefore we can compete on price? So economies of scale or cost advantages, that's a really big thing. Capital requirements, we talked about the price of breaking into the market. So if you need to lay out money up front to start your business, that's actually a good sign. Yes, it comes with risk. If you don't get it wrong, you're going to lose that money. Take a HGV business. It's really not that cheap to go and buy a lorry. There are hundreds of thousands of pounds to go and buy a lorry. So you want to put a truck on the road, you've got to go and buy a lorry. You've got to get a license because you need an operator's license to run that lorry. So therefore, you might think that lorry drivers are 10 a penny, but self-employed lorry drivers are not.
No, true.
It's a difficult industry to break into because it's got high capital outlay and you can get economies of scale by hedging and getting bulk buying on your fuel and things like that. And it's regulated. You need an operator's license to have a HGV on the road. Compare that to a van driver.
Yeah.
How many Amazon drivers are out there now? Anyone can go and
buy a van, whatever else. Yeah.
Not even buy a van, rent a van.
Rent a van, yeah. But once you go over 7.5 ton, you've got to have a
So you go and rent a van, and now Amazon drivers are 10 a penny. So what would you rather do? Would you rather set up a distribution company with HGVs, or would you rather set up a distribution company with vans?
Yeah.
So you can see how that plays out there.
Good.
Then we've got suppliers or distribution channels. So if for example, getting into supermarkets, if you're a product that needs to get into supermarkets, it's very difficult to get into a supermarket. They have thousands upon thousands of products pitched to them. But if you've got that relationship and you've got a distribution channel that you can take advantage of that is difficult for your competitors to get into, then that's really, really powerful and protects you.
Yeah. It's like buying a wholesaler. Yeah,
we talked a bit about brand loyalty and how likely somebody is to switch away from you. And then we also talked about retaliation. So this is all about price wars, locking people out. So I am very sure that if we decided to set up an airline, we could have the aeroplanes, we could even have the bookings. Would Heathrow give us a booking slot?
Well, Heathrow wouldn't because it's full.
No, but do you know how difficult it would be to get into one of those airlines? Because the other airlines, the BAs, the EasyJets, whoever they would be lobbying. There'd be lobbying, there'd be
there's
relationship building.
Yeah.
It'd be very, very difficult to break in. So they would try their best to keep us out.
Yeah.
And so when that sort of dog eat dog retaliation, boys club mentality, whatever words you want to put around it, when that exists, that is actually very, very positive. And people look at that in a very negative light. But I think that's actually, it's very difficult to break into those marketplaces when they're very relationship based.
Great. Well, there's a very, very extensive list of things you can do to protect your business from a kid with a laptop. And I think the best thing to do is to listen back through all of them and stick them in a chart and tick them off, whether you have them or you don't, and see what your holes are. If you don't have any of them, you've got a real problem.
Go to Claude. Ask Claude to rate your business against Porter's 5 Forces.
ChatGPT, or Gemini, or Grok, or any commodity AI that's going to race to the bottom.
Porter's 5 Forces threat of new entrants. Ask it to give you a score out of 1 to 10, and then
everything you know about my business. Could you rate me 1 to 10 out of the Porter? What's it called? Porter's 5 Forces threat of new entrants specifically. Just do a review of your business,
and it will be a really good starting point. It will give you something to get your juices flowing. Ask it to put it in table format. Tell you where you're strong, where you're weak, where it thinks there's opportunities. It'll be a really, really good place to start. Absolutely
brilliant. And let's move on to this week's Profit Cash Growth Extra. So this week, I love a mouse, Claire.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, today I want to talk about my favourite mouse, which is the Logi Pebble mouse.
Sorry,
right?
Are you not literally? There is nothing on this paper that's existed in our podcast today.
So I'm just putting forward a vote for the Logi Pebble mouse because I've now bought a second one of these. I've got one at home. I brought one for the office. This is my favourite type of mouse because it connects by Bluetooth to my laptop, and I literally love it. The battery literally never runs out. I've had one that's been on for like 3 years, and I've had to replace that one that you gave me in the office because honestly, it was just like, it wasn't moving around the screen in the same way that I was moving it on my desk. But these are just brilliant. These are like 15 quid.
Jesus, you're a bit high maintenance when it comes to...
I do love the Logi Pebble mouse, honestly.
Do we call it mouse when you come to your mouse, or when you come to your
now I've got
mice?
2 of them if I call them my meese.
No, not your mice.
No, you're right. You can't make it worse. What's the word for mice? Mouses.
No, it's mice.
Mice. Me.
It's a mice. This links back to last week.
I know.
Was it? No.
It was this.
It was this week.
This podcast has gone on that long. It actually was the beginning of this week's podcast, so leave it out. Thanks for joining us for another week's podcast. As always, if you'd like to work on the team Profit Cash Growth, go over to the website profitcashgrowth.com. No matter what industry you're in, if you're trying to work out what moats you want to put around your business, Claire's team would do that in one of their quarterly FD meetings for you, where you talk about strategy and growth, not just the numbers as you would in the monthly meetings. As always, rate, review and subscribe to the podcast. Please just follow it if you follow it on Apple, on Spotify, and share this episode with anyone that you know. And we'll see you again after a long episode this week, next week.